I'm so glad and happy to have with me today one of the great masters in the culture of music. I have with me today Kudsi Erguner. Happy to have you with Alnadi viewers, Master.
Yeah, it's a pleasure for me also. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, without further ado, this is our first interview, so I will start with the biography. Let's have uh, a generous description about your biography and then let's go to the musical biography.
Well, it's very difficult to speak about himself, it's because on one hand, you know that a man who knows himself is already a wise man. So, but I will just give you some details of my life which still correspond to your research about the music, Ottoman music and Istanbul music. Because we forget very often that Turkey had an important cultural revolution. And it is not only with the Republic, it was a bit behind till the Ittihad Terakki, with the Union and Progress, as we say in English. And so that was the period where we decided to turn our faces to Europe. And we thought to become a civilized people if we look like them. So in the beginning it was like a bird with the two
Wings?
Two wings.
Yeah.
And because there was in one hand the Western hope, and on the other hand the traditions were still alive.
Okay.
But after the beginning of the 20th century, we cut one of these wings, and we cannot fly anymore.
Wow.
And so this changement of the civilization is very important for my generation, for all the generation, for Turkey in reality, because we thought that anything, including the music, including the Sufi traditions, religious traditions, and everything, was a sort of handicap to become civilized. And so I grown up in a context where it was very shameful to say that I play ney for my generation. I mean, in certain milieu. And it was very shameful to say that every Sunday we go to a tekke, to a zavia. It was shameful to say that I go out to prayer for the Friday, It was sort of very... But for another part of the society, it was the contrary. So I was like the bell of the Christian church, going one to... because I was in one hand, for example, in the Italian college, studying the Italian language, and we were learning the Dante's Divina Commedia.
Yeah.
Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in the hill.
Yes.
But in the evening we were going to the tekke. When you say Muhammad, people they were crying because of emotion.
Okay.
So it was very contradictory situation for me. So, but it was also very rich because I could be involved with the two parts of the society. And I always say that I'm very happy that I belong to a family of lay players, musicians, and Sufis, etc. Not to say that I am proud of my ancestors, but to say that if I was not belonging to a family like this, I would never be aware about the existence of all these rich treasures that I am now involved. That's very important, and so I seeing that the generations before suffering because of this ambiance, which was the contrary of their taste, their joy of life. I gave to myself the mission of revivify what it was lost in that period.
Okay.
So, of course, being very young as a Ney player, it was not very encouraging. Just to give you the image, as I told you before, we are just 2 Ney players today in Turkey from my age, overseas 70s. But now, with the changement of the society, when all this became a sort of anti-revolution, contra-revolution of the republic with the actual policy, it's been so much encouraged that only in Istanbul there are more than 75 ateliers where they make Ney and sell Ney and they teach Ney.
Wow.
You see? So it's sort of the contrary of the period that I was living. So, but we forgot about this. I mean, it's not just to complain about this, but it's a fact that my mentality, my efforts on the music, my formation is related to all this. And also this fact gave me the possibility of playing with big masters, with these big important names of the music from the past generation, which they are legendary today. Even though I was a kid next to them, but for example, I accompanied Mine Nurettin Selçuk, the grand name. I had the chance to play with Yorgo Bacanos, Cahit Özkan, the Yaylı Tambur player, Batanay, Ercüment Batanay, Hakan Gündüz, and Kani Karaca, and all these people, I grown up with them. So even the father of Ercüment Batanay, Kemal Batanay, he was one of my teachers. And also Saadettin Eper, who was one of the last Mevlevi musicians that I was going in his house to learn the Mevlevi music, etc. So all these occasions for a man like me, 15, 16 years old in that period, it was impossible, inaccessible for the others of my generation. And also there was another chance for me that in that period there was no concerts, public concerts. But the music was existing in the meetings, in very friendly meetings. One of the tradition of that period, that the masters of the music, they were receiving people in their house. Not only students, but all the musicians, they could come and play together and make what we call sohbet, conversation about the music, about the literature, etc. One of these places was the house of my grandfather, every Tuesday. And these meetings came after the death of my grandfather in our house. So I was maybe, 5, 6 years old, and the house was plenty of people singing, playing, etc. And on top of this, every Sunday, we were going also to a tekke, which is the Özbek tekkesi, because in Istanbul there are some tekkes to receive the pilgrims, people on travel. And this was built up in the early 18th century to receive the Uzbekistan people. That's why called Uzbekler tekkesi. And as it was in that period a bit far away from the center of the city, so it was not much control, because it was forbidden to have this kind of meetings. I'm talking about the 60s, 50s, 70s, even. So every Sunday we were going there. Even we had a room in the tekke. We were sleeping on Saturday, preparation of the cook, etc. But I mean, sometimes there was at least 200, 300 persons there. You see, It was a big meeting and very important musicians, they were coming there. Today, they all passed away. I mean, even Necdet Yaşar from the young generation, relatively young generation. Alaaddin Yavaşça, this is a great singer. I mean, Cüneyt Orkun, etc. They were all coming there. Gani Karaca was every Sunday also. So it was also an atmosphere which remained in my mind, in my memories. And one day it came that they say, oh, hey, take your name, join to them. You see.
They push.
And it came so naturally. So, but the second part of my life is also in Europe, because in 1970, first time that we came to Paris to represent the Mevlevi Burning Dervish ceremony in the Seyir Théâtre de la Ville here, and under the direction of my father, I noticed suddenly that there were more French people interested to this tradition than in Turkey.
Is it?
Yeah,
Or
in
was it?
that time.
Yes.
And suddenly I thought that instead of being shameful because that I play ney, etc., I could be very proud because you see, I see all these people so looking to you like a illuminated young man, you see. And then we went to London. We had a big tour in America. It was the same all over the Europe, wherever we were going. We were being received by people deeply interested with all this. With the music, with the ceremony, with Rumi, etc., with Sufi tradition, etc. And so it was a big revolution in my mind, because in one hand, again, a contradiction, as I told you. In one hand, I belong to a culture that I even don't dare to say to the people of my generation that we go every Sunday to Tekke, I play ney, etc. And suddenly, the opposite in Europe. And so I found myself in Europe more permanent after 73. And so I studied here architecture, musicology, and during that period, I can say maybe I've done thousands of concerts in all over Europe. And I had some mission from UNESCO to record music in Turkey, to create the collection of archives of UNESCO. I had the chance to travel a lot with the theater piece called Mahabharata of Peter Brook, on which I have done the music. We have done India, Pakistan, etc. And then I was very interested in Pakistan and India. I've been several times myself to record and try to understand the Indian music and Japanese music, etc. I've been interested in different musics. And also, I should say that in 1980s, the first album, so-called world music, with Peter Gabriel, I was the first musician who contributed to his album Passion. You see, and so my career is developed like this in Europe, and the fact of being in Europe also gave me a vision that I belong to a country who has a geographical and political border, which is very, very restricted. But the cultural border to which I belong is maybe 1,000 times larger than this. So I discovered that I had something to do with India. I had something to do with the Arab world, with Pakistan, with Balkan countries. If you go to further, even with Europe, because there was some exchange, cultural exchange, etc., with Spain, with Andalusia, etc. So that opened my eyes and tried to see if I can underline all these emotions with my musical work and creative work that I have done till now.
Interesting. Interesting. So this continued from the 80s till today in the same fashion, right?
No, it's from 70s.
Yeah, from 70s, and maybe we'll dig deep into particulars later, but going back to the community that you lived in with the great masters, with the Tekia, Uzbek Tekia, and all these things back in Turkey, didn't you get worried when you moved to Europe that you will miss such community? I know it's being appreciated in Europe the way you told, but missing the community itself, like
no, I was very happy for one thing, because I left behind me a country moving very fastly in a direction that I wouldn't like to be in it.
Okay.
You see, which was worrying me to see this fact, this transformation of the society, of the daily life, and the acculturation of my country and my surrounding and the people I had to deal. So I was, in a sense, worried not be there, but happy to not be involved with all these transformations. Because the fact that I am in Europe is protect me from to submit all these influences that I think negative.
Okay, and maybe this has resulted into a great production of many things and influences, students and everything. We will come to that later. However, you still have access to the previous community. You can go back anytime. We saw people working with you in many albums and many projects from back home.
Yeah. I of course I am not completely separated to my country, to my source of emotions and research. But it's, for example, the decade that I left behind me is now transformed into something else, headed by a foundation, and it's not anymore a techie, it became something else. And the building is restored, but inside is emptied. And so, it's very delicate to see, for example, the Sema, the music of the Mevlevi tradition to which I did participate since '67 in Konya, all the ceremonies. To see now the dimension of tourism and folkloric of Konya, etc. To see upsets me. I'm happy to have not been involved with this, and I'm so separated with all this. And because to be out of this, it gives me also the possibility of freely criticizing this.
Yes, but Master, did you anticipate what is happening today in Turkey, music-wise? Commercial, non-commercial, classical, very traditional. Is there anything that was really anticipated from that moment when you left in the way it is today? Are we in good shape or not in good shape?
Yeah, but you see, the work I've done, because till 80s, 85 or 90s, I was working with the older generation, like İhsan Özgen, Necdet Yaşar, Hüsnü Anıl, and Kanun, etc. All this, they were in between me and my father's generation. And after 90s, I decided to give a possibility to the young generation. And I involved young people like Derya Türkan, who was still a student of the conservatory, and like Hakan Güngör, the Kanun player, or daughter musicians like Murat, etc. I include them in my ensemble, and we started to make concerts. And so I believe that the fact that they've seen what is the interest in Europe, it opened their eyes also.
Mm.
And get out from this very academic interpretation that there is in Turkey in these state ensembles to be more free, to live their musical expression more personally.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the positive effect of my work. But on the point of the ideas that I developed, like the relation of the music, Ottoman music with the Byzantine, etc. All my projects, they turn out to be a very kitsch version of the wood when it's taken. For example, when I have done this concert in Saint Irene, the Aya Irini church in Istanbul, which is the oldest church from 5th century, with a big Greek ensemble of Lykurgos Angelopoulos and the ensemble that created the muezzins of Istanbul to make 15th century music with the old Byzantine music. It had an impact. But the year after, somebody else has done the same thing, with the smoke coming on the stage, with the dervishes turning. You see?
Yeah.
You understand what I mean?
Yeah, tourist version.
Yeah, and unluckily, all the projects that I try to do, instead of having an impact of a reflection, of a vision, to give a new dimension to the musical life, becomes adapted to the today's, I say, populist and kitsch version of the spectacle.
Master, this is the way they know things.
Yeah, but it's pity. I mean, it's not my goal. That's not my goal. And so I find myself, projects that I have done, nobody heard about this except the people that were in the hall. But the kitchen populist version, it became very famous.
Maybe it will indicate the original.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't mind about this. I mean, I accept from the beginning this kind of thing, but it's pity because all this populist version they are done most of the time with these people that I introduced to the music.
Yes, Master. Before we leave this biography side, there are very important points. Let's maybe shed some light on them, and then move forward with many other interesting topics with our viewers. First of all, let's talk about the learning experience you had from such community. How did you learn music compared to today?
Yeah, that's an important point because I give you an example. When I was young, I was 11, 12, 13 years old. I was very enthusiastic of playing all the time. I was all the time playing.
Yeah.
Sometimes my father, my family saying, "Hey, shut up, let us to speak." Yeah. So the father of Ercüment Batanay, Kemal Batanay, who was a hafiz, a singer and calligrapher, a very important name of that generation. One day he said to my father, "Give me your son, I want to teach him." I was very happy. So there was a madrasa in Beyazıt. So he said, it was a Tuesday. You come Tuesday after the Salat Asr, be there. So I went there. So he was sitting on a chair. He said, "Take a chair." I immediately took my ney. I was thinking that he was going to ask me to play ney. He said, no, put it away. Repeat why I sing. I said, "I'm not a singer." No. Doesn't work like that.
Yes.
He started to beat the usul on his knees, starting with the usul of Sofyan, which is the 4 beats.
Yes.
And he asked me to sing. He started to sing a part of a song that I did have to repeat, and the second part. It was very boring for me. you see, I was so enthusiastic. I wanted to play Ney. So, and after I understood, because he started in that way to learn it, so he wanted me to learn like this. And after, I mean, I've worked with him quite a time, and afterward, there is this Saadet Neber that he was in his house, bringing all the Hafizes, who was the teacher of the Kani Karaja.
Yes.
By the way. I was going to his house in Kanlıca. I memorized the Acamashiran Ayin, Ayin, Ruhi Irak, Suzinak Ayin, Hijaz Ayin, and Penchki Ayin.
Wow.
So I learned there with rhythms to beat on the knees and just repeat phrase by phrase, etc. But we call the old version of the teaching is the meshk.
Yes.
But the meshk comes from calligraphy.
Right.
Which means that, for example, you write a letter like a B.
Yes.
And what is the dimension of the opening, this part and the profounder? There is a calculation with the points.
Right.
But afterward, the master makes one, and you have to repeat thousands and thousands times to do something which resembles to his.
Right.
You see? That was the mesh.
Yes.
Now, if you report this into the music, which means that when you learn some piece, somebody beat the usul, the cycle, he sings or he plays, and you have to repeat exactly till the time it becomes the same, exactly the same. If there are some corrections is to be done, etc. What was the importance of this? Which makes that music also is a key question of the memory. You memorize melodies, melodies which they make richer your musical world. First of all. Secondly, the fact that you beat the usul, the rhythm on your knees, while you memorize the melody, it gives you a good understanding the relation of the wazn, or cycle, rhythmic cycle, and the melody.
Yes.
And that's very, very important. Now, of course, comparing today, everybody reads the scores. And the scores are written not on the rhythmic cycle, these big cycles in question, but all written with the 4 bars.
Yes.
So it doesn't give the spirit of the. I mean, I don't want to compare the modernity and the past in this chapter, but that was the way that I learned the music personally, and also. There was another chance. There was some associations. For example, there was an association created by Emin Ongan, the great violin player, called Üsküdar Muski Cemiyeti. Cemiyeti Muski fi Üsküdar.
Yes.
And I was going there. But as it was very far to our house, I was not able to go every time. But many times I was going there. There was also another association for the young university students. So it was funny for me because I was 14, 15 years old and they were all university people. And,
prodigy.
Yeah, and it was a place because I didn't have much friends of my generation, you can imagine.
Yes.
Because we didn't share the same world. So I have just only few, let's say just 2 friends in Turkey of my generation.
Yes.
And also there was another Muski Cemiyeti which was created by Saadettin Arel, the famous musicologist.
Yes.
And the name was called progressive müzik cemiyeti, ileri Türk musikisi cemiyeti.
Uh-huh.
And I was going also there sometime. But it happened also something that when I was, I have to say this also, when I was 11 years old, there was a program in the radio called Music for the Children.
Oh.
I was 11 years old, so it means that 63, 64 in these years.
Mm.
And the director of this program asked to me to participate to this program to play ney.
Mm.
And I had a classmate, his name was Memdu, he was playing piano.
Mm.
Both of us, we went to this program.
Mm.
And I was kicked out from this program, from the director of the radio house, because it was forbidden to encourage the young generation to play the traditional music.
Mm.
That worried me a lot.
Mm.
So I asked to my father that I want to play accordion.
Okay.
My father said, okay, if you want. So I started to study with a very famous accordion player, Agop Pakius.
Mm.
That was very helpful to me because I learned from him how to read the scores.
Okay.
And have a very light idea about the harmony, etc.
Mm.
But it didn't last much, 5 or 6 months. And so I understood that was not my way.
Mm.
But it was a wish to say also that, I am today, I'm also with my generation, that was the only thing. Anyhow, so, that was my childhood. And so my musical formation is also by playing. By playing on the side of my father, on the side of all these meetings and all these associations that I mentioned. That weekly they had a meeting that I was all the time going to play with them, and we had also some small concerts, public concerts with all these associations to present the work.
Yes.
And and that was the musical life for people like me.
Okay, Master. Now, comparing, is there any remains of Damascus today in Turkey? Any remains of this kind of learning today in Turkey?
At my knowledge, not. There is this conservatory created in 1976 by the student of Arel, Ercüment Berker.
Yeah.
He created this conservatory because in 76 they managed, because they were a bit introduced with the government, and they managed to impose the idea of creating a Turkish music conservatory.
Okay.
So they were very happy. But the program was, if you play Kanun, you have to learn the piano also.
Oh.
If you play ney, you have to learn also Western flute.
By shame.
Yeah, if you play oud, you have to learn the oud guitar also. Yeah. So the idea is to bring this very Western solution to the makam music, because the idea of Arel and the early republic, as you may know, is it has two dimensions. One, to prove that we are a national population. There's a nationalism. We are Turkish.
Yes.
And the Turks, they are coming from Central Asia. Our origin is from Central Asia. So if you look, for example, the names of this period generation, they all called Timur, Cengiz, Attila, etc.
Yeah.
And but that is not enough. The other horizon for us, it was the Europe, polyphonic music of Europe. So culturally, these two things had come together. But in the middle of this, the Ottoman heritage, it was not nationalistic. it was inculpated to become Byzantine, stolen to the Byzance, with influences of Arab and Farsi, etc. So it was a negative thing. There was nothing in Turkish in this.
Yeah.
What is the proposition of Arel? Arel came, he said, no, this is purely Turkish also.
Yes.
And then what you do with Armenian composers like Hampar Sum, Tatyos Efendi, etc.? No, they said, they are Armenians who they serve to the Turkish music. See?
Okay.
And he wrote this famous book, the Turkish music belonged to whom?
Okay.
And so, if you really understand this cultural atmosphere, you understand why the Makam music didn't have his place, unless to be proved that it's Turkish, and it can be westernized, like Arel was proposing.
Yeah.
And he started to write duo of Ney or sing utri in polyphony, etc. This kind of work started in the period. So the teaching in this conservatory is been in that sense. You see, but then there was no any teacher, so they had to employ the old teachers. Yeah, like Niyazi Sayin as a native teacher, like Akaginduz as a native teacher, or Junaid Orhan as a Kemençe player, who was also very Arabist, or Bekir Sıtkı Sezgin for the singing, etc. So these teachers, they had their opinion to teach to the students. I'm talking about the early generation of the teachers.
Yes.
But the young generation of the teachers today, they are formed with this idea of Arel.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
So they don't have something else to add to this theory, modern theory to the music. And I really see now the young generation coming out from these conservatories, because I do many masterworks in Europe also, they come. It's quite a big deception from the point of the teaching. So there is no mesh. There is this conservatory teaching, which has another direction than the traditional way. Wow.
What about exceptions? Are there exceptions in these generations?
Yeah, there are some talented musicians. I mean, which they, by listening or recording, that's also another positive thing about the musical life, because you should know, for example, Necdet Yaşar. He learned to play tambur because he came to Istanbul with the balama.
Yes.
And he learned to play the tambur by listening the 78 tunes of Tambur Cemil.
Yes, true.
By imitating it. And now, this phenomenon of YouTube, everything is there by internet. And so, of course, some talented musicians, they understand the difference between what they learned in the conservatory and what it should be by the old generation.
Yes.
So there are some of them coming like this out, and because they are talented and they are intelligent.
And maybe there are groups of such majlis or such communities that they sit in the house, maybe practice this, or is it rare now?
I don't know much about this, but I mean, there are also many majlis which sort of pretending Sufi movement, because it is another subject. So
yeah, let's leave it. Yeah, so Master, touching in a few points related to this topic, is the practice. Did you guys have a different way of practicing a music? Practice in the sense, like the practice routine. What do you practice? What is the content? For how long? There is maybe one kind of practice that we know from what we learned from the Western style.
Well, also I should maybe explain to you this fact, because, for example, I was also a member of as an A player later on before I come to Paris, in the ensemble of the radio, Turkish radio television,
Yes.
which was the very influent to our musical life.
Mm-hmm.
And I was playing in the ensemble of Nevzat Atlı, who was the director. He became after the director of the state orchestra, which so monotony. I mean, if you look in YouTube, their programs, even people, they take the breath in the same time. Like they are all like the mummies without moving. Any expression is very, very frozen. I played nearly 2 years in this ensemble, which is very, very monotone. But as I told you, my life is always in the contradiction. So when I go out of this and I go to the majlis, the same musicians, they were playing with so joy.
Yes.
And what we were calling classical music, it was this Frisian way, and the rest was just music.
Yes.
So, and I developed this idea because I believe our music is not monodic. It's a I shouldn't say I should say heterophonic.
Yeah.
Why heterophonic? Because we've been talking about the meshk.
Yes.
So what happened? You and me, we know the same composition. Okay? You learned from X teacher and I learned from another teacher.
Yes.
In his memory, and in his transmission, the same piece is sang with some variation. And also I have some variation different than his. So when we were coming to play together or sing together, nobody was saying yours is wrong.
Yes.
Everybody was singing together.
Yes.
And it gave a sort of heterophony. Not only because of the difference of the sources, but also because of the personal interpretation. And also because of the possibilities of different instruments. The ornamentation that I can do with ney is different than the canon.
Yeah.
Or than the oud. So it was giving us very, very interesting heterophony that I heard this is in my ears. So I tried to build up this. But to come back again to these ensembles of the state, like directed, like Nevzat Atlı, who is a big name, of course. When I criticize him, people they think that I am insulting the prophet of the music.
Yeah.
But they have done a big harm, for my understanding. Him, Yilmaz Estuna, Cüneyt Orhon, and this sort of a group of people, students of RL also, they create a committee, which is called Committee of Repertoire. And they did transcribe all these pieces and put a stamp on it. This composition can be played only like this.
Closed.
Okay? But it was so interesting. For example, if you look at the old scores, where it is da-da-di-da-da-da-di-da-ram, no, this clean. Da. Not da-da-di-da-da-da-di-da-ram, this is not possible. This kind of thing made that this uninteresting, the music. Even for us, who we were playing in this ensemble, I was getting bored. You see, of course, I was very enthusiastic about the music, and but to play in that way, it was really boring for me. So, in my projects in Europe, I always tried to give this freedom to the musicians with whom I work, because our music, in the contrary of the Western music, because if you look to the Western orchestras, the music is very collective, not personal. But the society is very individualist. But in the opposite, in Orient, we are very collective.
Yes.
The idea of Jama'at.
Yes.
No?
Yes.
But in the music, we are very individualist.
Interesting.
That is a space of liberty for the musician. You see, to kill this is nonsense. It's a massacre. So I try to give this freedom to the musicians, to which whom I work. I couldn't do it with old generation. I couldn't do it with Neyzen, Yashar, etc., because they were coming from this generation. Ihsan less, Ihsan is again less, but Yashar was more. He played for 30 years, 40 years in the ensemble of Neyzen, with all this way of playing. So, but you people, young people like Derya, Türkan, etc., or Hakan, etc., I push them to be free about this. Don't be related, and that bring something personal also to the music that you are playing, and feel the moment that you are playing, because this music has one thing to communicate, not only the sound, over the sound, the joy of playing this music.
Yeah.
If you don't have it, you don't communicate anything.
Yeah. And who play music? Who plays that music?
Yeah.
Will this person be the same like that person, or they are different? Like,
It should be different, of course.
as you said before, you said the music is not the instrument, not the score.
Yeah, of course.
It is the person.
Yeah, of course.
Interesting.
I mean, it's your personal taste, what we call zawq.
Yeah. So, Master, how did you practice music back then versus the new way of practicing a piece to memorize it or to master it, to show it on a stage, in individual or group setup?
Well, I must say that I don't know, after being played so many different things, my memory is getting a bit confused also by the age. So, but for my instrument, especially for Ney, there is just one practice to make the sound of the instrument, which is different than the other instruments. Because when you learn the canon, you touch the string, you have a sound. For the oud, etc. If it's well tuned, you can enjoy yourself. But Ney, you have to work the sound of it. Which means that you have to work the lowest octave very strong, very deep, and to have the control of it.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, in this sense, the Ney is a very difficult instrument because there is not only technique of playing of something, but there is this necessity of the sound. So personally, I always advise to my Ney students to work this sound. The rest it comes to easily.
Natural, yeah. So the mishq and the memorization and the group.
Yeah, I mean, you learn the repertoire. That's another thing. But to work on the instrument is that.
Yeah. Master, I think it's time to have a break with our audience, and then we have many things to discuss after that. Please select one of your work. You have a lot of things to share. I don't know. Pick anything and tell us about it, and let's enjoy it.
I don't know what I can propose you, but let's listen this recording that we have done in Singapore with the different religious songs of Istanbul. The project called Sacred Songs of Istanbul. Okay,
what about it? Just a brief description about this project's idea.
Well, this idea that after all this nationalistic view of the music, I pretend that the music to which we belong is not a ethnic music. It's a music which covers all the Middle East, even Africa, Persia, even India, and even the medieval Europe before that is Enlightenment. I don't know if it's Enlightenment or not, but so I wanted to underline this. So Istanbul was a very important center for this kind of work because there are still Greek people singing the Byzantine music. There are Armenians singing in Makam what they call Sharagan, the religious songs. There are Jewish people of Istanbul, they sing in Hebrew language some ilahis called Maftirim, which is related with the word of Iftar. Maftirim, which is a sort of festivity at the end of Shabbat, they say they were singing.
Okay.
Some compositions in Arabic, some songs in Farsi from Ismail Dede. Did I forget anything? No, it's also the Turkish, of course. Yeah.
So that was all in one presentation.
On our presentation, and also what is for me what's important, that instead of having a singer from different church, I have done with 4 or 5 professional singers. I mean, they were all my students, but they are artists. I mean, they know how to sing, etc. So we have done a work in pronunciation phonetically in different languages, so they could sing. I mean, if, for example, if you listen something in Arabic, forgive us if the pronunciation is not so correct. But the idea comes that when you see an Italian opera sang by the German or an opera of Mozart sang by Italians or English, there's no problem. Why it would be a problem that some Turkish singers sing in Hebrew or Arabic or Farsi or Greek?
Yeah, music is there.
Yeah.
And care about the music.
Yeah.
Interesting. Let's listen to it then.
Listen.
صل على نور الهدى أحمد محمد مصطفى أحمد محمد مصطفى محمد
Allahümme salli alel Mustafa.
Allahümme salli alel Mustafa.
بديع الجمال وبحر التفا
بديع الجمال وبحر الوفا.
Allahümme salli alel Mustafa. Allahümme salli alel Mustafa. Bediül cemali ve bahril vefa. Bediül cemali ve bahril vefa. Ve salli aleyhi kemayen bahir. Ve salli aleyhi kemayen bahir. Ve sadık Muhammed aleyhisselam. Ve sadık Muhammed aleyhisselam.
Es-Sadık Muhammed aleyhisselam Es-Sadık Muhammed aleyhisselam Es-Sadık Muhammed aleyhisselam Es-Sadık Muhammed aleyhisselam.
Seyir. Now, I would like to tell you that the Sufi tradition, which was very, very important in the Ottoman period, was also the source of inspiration for many arts, specifically the poetry and the music. This is now, we will present you some pieces in Persian language, but the Persian language pronounced with a Turkish accent. It exists. I mean, there's Indian accent for English, and there's Turkish accent for Persian. And you have a very, very important poet, Hafez. Hafez, they say, the Persian friends. We pronounce Hafez. From the 15th century. He is the greatest poet, not only for the Persian language, but for whole the world. We'd never had any so fine poet than him. And you know that Goethe, the German poet, national poet of the German people, he was inspired by his poems, translated into German. So his poems are also composed in Istanbul, specifically by a very important Sufi composer, Ismail Dede Efendi. Now, even he's so famous that we call our music, we call the music of Dede Efendi. He composed so many pieces. But this piece is very interesting because it's been composed in a common way with the Minister of the Foreign Affairs of 18th century. You see that in that period, the political people, they were very fine people and also fine musicians. And so this is Rastkar Muhteşem, Müşterek, composed in the Persian language by Dede Efendi.
رهی تو بر چهره نهایله حیرت بر چهره نهایله حیرت
actually we have enjoyed this maybe multicultural, beyond border kind of project, and we really enjoyed it. Now let's talk about the idea of one culture, the idea of the nationalistic borders, identities, personalities.
Yes, well, I believe that the music,
Hmm.
poetry,
Hmm.
and all the arts, they are related to a civilization in which the artist is formed.
Mhm.
When there is no civilization, the art becomes conservative.
Mhm.
It's not anymore alive.
Yes.
But to keep it alive, especially for the music,
Mhm.
as I thought that music is for the ears. So if there is no any people who appreciate the music without any cultural conditioning,
Mm.
and just precise what I mean by cultural conditioning, because on a nationalistic view, now people they say, there is some Turkish music, so let's say listen Turkish music.
Mm.
But for me, the music, it doesn't have any nationality. Music is music.
Mm.
If you are meloman,
Mm.
if you have the sensibility of the music, you appreciate all kind of music, which is nicely expressed.
Mm.
So today, what happens that many people in our countries, which as they are conditioned that the art and the music and the civilization, it can come only from the western part of the world. I mean, it's a small part of the world, which is Europe,
Mm.
and the rest is not an artistic value. You cannot progress.
Mm.
So, but if we go a bit behind of all this, we know that starting from the 17th century, the European countries, England, France, Spain, Portugal, the poor Germans, they couldn't have this possibility because they were stuck. They didn't have this opening to the big seas.
Yes.
And they occupied the world.
Mm.
And they write that everything belongs to them. Africa, India. I mean, you can imagine for 300 years India was English.
Mm.
The South America for centuries, it was shared by Portuguese in Spanish, in English, etc. China also.
Mhm.
So this fact also brings a sort of complex of inferiority
Mm.
to the occupied populations.
Mm.
Because instead of complaining from this occupation, they admire their occupants. They said, oh, they are very intelligent person.
Mm.
We had even for Islam. If an English guy who was interested with Islam, he was more intelligent what he was saying about Islam than any alim ulema of the Islamic world. Because he's in English. He's French, so he must be more intelligent than us.
Mm.
So all this situation made that our intelligentsia also had this désintéressement, as you say in French. They are not anymore interested with the artistic expression of their original country. And so you see, for example, one of the biggest composer of the modern period, Adnan Saygun, who made his polyphonic compositions because he was sent in the early days of the Republic to learn the Western music.
Mm.
He composed the oratorio of Yunus Emre, for example, you see.
Mm.
I did read a reportage with him. So he was saying that Hafiz Shirazi,
Mhm.
he is a folk ethnic poet of Iran. he has been translated into English and he became universal.
Oh.
And this example is very important because if you play Utri Ismail Dede with an orchestra, it can become universal. Nobody
Yes.
thinks that if we play as it should be, maybe it's more universal.
Yes.
You see? Nobody is interested in what is said,
Mm.
but how is it being said?
Mm.
In which language is being said?
Yes.
So, which means that the meaning is not important.
Mm.
The language of the expression is more important.
Mm.
Because the language becomes the criterion of the art and civilization. And in consequence of this, politically what we had when the colonization is finished, we had people educated by them to direct all these countries.
Mm.
And they create all these institutions which culturally to provoke this Western idea of the culture, to impose the Western culture. I mean, if you see in all African countries or Arab countries, Turkey, Italy, you have symphonic orchestras. We are very proud of them, but they don't play well. I mean, they don't have any impact in Europe. Just to satisfy that we also have a symphonic orchestra. But nobody invests in all these countries to help or to provoke and to conserve or to keep alive the musical heritage, the high musical heritage of their country. And at the end, we have this situation, what we call the global culture, which is, for me, is not a physical occupation, but is a mental occupation, mental colonization. You see, if you from Japan till Turkey to Istanbul to any city of Turkey or Arab countries, everybody sees the same movies. Everybody listens same artists, same musicians, but they're all coming from California, of London, of I don't know, from west part of the world. So I think the time is came to contribute to this global culture, not to submit it, but also to contribute it.
Yes.
To say, hey, we are also there. If there is a global culture, in this global culture there will be not only Bach, but also Mozart, also Meraghi, also Ismail Dede, or Utri, or any big composer from Iran, or if there is Shakespeare, there is also Hafiz of Shiraz, there is also Rumi. You
Yes.
see? So we have to bring this dimension. But the problem, since we think ourselves that this heritage is not so valuable, we cannot contribute to anything. You see, the world knows today about Rumi because of some people which they speak about Rumi from America.
Yeah.
And they don't know anything about Rumi, but they just read some poems and they make blah blah out of this. The same thing in all, but it's not a question of ethnicity, being Western or not, but it's a question of being really involved in this culture.
Yes.
I say, well, we can give the example of Ross Daly. He's an Irish guy.
Yeah.
He's a perfect musician, and he has done a great work because he lives with this. He believes to this music.
Yes.
It's not a question of ethnicity.
Yes.
It's a question of understanding interest that we have in a civilization. So I hope one day our intelligentsias also will be interested, will have this passion. But it comes slowly. Not as a chauvinistic value, not as a nationalistic value, but as a possibly universal value.
Yes.
You see, recently, for example, I have done an album which is fragments of the wedding ceremony music. Fragment from the ceremonies. It's an album that we record with my students. It had a prize of the best critic of ethnic music. I protest this because in this album there is the composition of Molla Jami. There is a composition of 15th century. There is a composition of Ismail Dede, Zekai Dede, etc. This is not ethnic music. So the best thing that I can obtain after this protest, they say, okay, it's not ethnic, but it's traditional. So what you say, what you think about when you say traditional, which means that for thousands of years nothing is changed, everybody is just repeating the same thing. No. It's an evolutive thing. They are composers. You see, for example, I gave the example of Rosteli. He composed very beautiful pieces in Makam world. And I appreciate, and they are more traditional and more stylistically more corresponding to the Ottoman music than the ones that is composed by the young musicians in Turkey.
Yeah.
You see, on the Makam understanding. So there are like him, Socrates also. There's another Greek guy also. He composed very beautiful things. And so we need absolutely to get rid of this problem and say, of course, if there is a global culture, if there is a universal culture, but we are also there.
Yeah, interesting.
Not only Turkey, India is there, China is there, Japan is there. They have also many beautiful things to contribute, not as a just understandable by Japanese people, but musically it's beautiful.
Yeah, yes, and it's like languages, master, right? You learn a language, you know how to communicate message through it, you carry your emotions with it. Music is an emotion language. It's the art of the ear, as you said.
Yeah.
So, so people learn these languages. They learn how to feel that language, how to understand it, and this idea of the international language, maybe not accurate, but people learn it like they learn any other natural language in the world today.
Let me give you an example. Just few days before,
Yes.
I was with somebody from the Turkish government, cultural department.
Yes.
He says to me, we have to export, we have to help people to learn about Yunus Emre. I said, that's not the problem. The problem that do you know what is Yunus Emre? Did you assimilate his poems? Did you read at least one of them? You see? Because the politic people, they say, okay, this is our culture, we have to export it. But before exporting, you have to import to your heart.
Yes.
And they say to me, oh, we are very proud of you, you represent Turkish music. No, I don't represent Turkish music. I represent the music that I love.
Yes.
And I try to play it.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Beautiful message, really. And what about dealing with the repertoire? I remember in our previous talk that you mentioned this connection from the original references or the original repertoire. At the same time, the problem of reproducing the same music exactly as is again and again and again in different albums. Now, seeing Haydn being played in a different way, or Al-Maraghi, or as we have seen you doing this in your albums.
Well, let's say that we are talking about the classical music. there is also on the side of this what we call Anatolian music, which has another problem. I would like to mention a few problems about this also. We are talking about the classical, literated Ottoman music. So this music has its forms. The first form, what we call the Pishrav. Pishrav is a Farsi word, which means literally prelude. So if you were playing a makam, you were meant to play before a Pishrav. Secondly, there is another form which is called Kar. Kar is the masterpiece. Kar means Farsi work.
Yes.
Really masterpiece. And this form is created by Abdul Qadir Meraghi. Nobody plays his cars. And then Karche, a small car. And then it comes Murabba. Murabba means 4-line poetry.
Yeah.
And then Naqsh Murabba. This is the first part of a set.
Yes.
And then people, they were singing a ghazal, Qasida, or Taqsim, instrumental piece. And then the other part of the set starts, what we call the semais.
Okay.
Our Raksak semai, our Sangin semai, Yurik semai, and instrumental semai. Semai is in the sense of the combination of 3 and 2.
Yeah.
So if you are talking about Aksak Semai, is 3, 2, 2, 3.
Yes.
Or Aksak 2, 2, 2, 3 and 3, 2, 2, or every Hindi 2, 2, 3, you see.
Yeah.
Or just 3 and 3 in the Semai. And the instrumental Semai, which is this instrumental version of all this composition with the lyrics.
Yes.
Now, what remained from all this? Instrumentally, we played just Peshrev and Semai. Bring in the beginning and the end.
Yes.
So, these forms are not, what we call a suite in the makam. Before, if somebody says, I know makam rast, which means that he can play one Peshrev, Kar, Karche, Vrabba, etc. in Semai part, by memory. That was the meshk.
Yes.
First. What happened with the Karche, with the first part, with the Beste, Murabba, etc.? Because this part is only with the lyrics of Farsi. Why? I always say that for the Western civilization, ancient Greek is one of the resources of their civilization. Farsi is also one of the sources of our civilization. We cannot pass on this. Because historically we know that when Islam came in the Arab world, the fact that the Persian people, they had more civilization, they had a very raffinated already civilization, to the point of the literature, etc. So the Islamization of this material gave a richness to the Islamic world, from India till to Istanbul. All is related to Persian language. All terminology of the music is Farsi. Ras, Tiga, Segya, Charya, Panjya, etc. All are terminology for the religion. You Arab world will say Salat, we say Namaz in Farsi.
Yeah.
You say Rasul, we say Payghambar. which is Farsi.
Yeah.
You say wudu, we say abdest.
Mm.
You see, in the music also, and in the poetry also.
Mm.
Because if you are a poet, you were obliged, a divan, what we call divan,
Yeah.
to start with Farsi poem, then Arabic poem, and then Osmani.
Mm.
So the music kept the same system.
Mm.
When you sing a set in a maqam, first Farsi, or Arabic, and then Turkish Semais. And of course, in a nationalistic period, you could not keep all this first part with Farsi and Arabic and complicated pieces.
Yes.
I mean, a piece of Meragi can last for 15, 20 minutes.
Mm.
Just one piece. You see? So, and now we are reduced what we call the sharkis.
Mm.
Sharkis, they are songs.
Yes.
They are very beautiful ones, which started from the end of the 18th century and the 19th century. And now what we call the Turkish classical music is the sharkis. What we call the fasl, like the muwashahat, they exist in Syria and in the Arab world. The fasl means that to bring songs, sharkis together with the different rhythmics,
Yes.
not in the classical sense. I tried to make one album on this sense, but I couldn't get the car. It was too complicated to make it sing, but we started with the murabba.
Mm.
But I have the one in this sense, a classical fasl album also, that I have done in 80s.
What is the title of this album?
Humayun Faslı.
Okay. All right.
Makam Humayun.
Yes.
And so this is doesn't exist anymore today. I mean, in the teaching, nobody would start to learn a car.
Mm.
So we have very beautiful cars. This tradition continued till Ismail Dede, for example. Ismail Dede composed cars. And we had somebody like Ahmet Avni Konuk, who composed even a Kar-ı Natık, just to teach 110 makams with
Okay, yeah.
beautiful piece. And so, I mean, the last generation, till 1950s, they have done a great work. I mean, everything was still continuing in this classical sense of it.
Yeah. Now, how to bring such of these pieces to life? Even the Samais and Bashrafs. Some of them are very old. How can we make them live? Like lively pieces, not just recorded beautifully and sold on discs or on digital format.
But let's be more general. What's the question? How to make a music alive?
Okay.
In general.
Yeah, good. And then we link it with the legacy concept.
Yeah, because if we look to the Western music, because one of the accusations that our intelligentsia they say, the time is changed. We are not in the Ottoman Kurt time. So this music is not valuable anymore because the history changed. There is no sultans to play this. Of course, okay. When you look to the Western culture, are we today in Versailles? Are we in the court of London, or are we in the court of Habsburg, or all these royal courts of Europe? No. But the music which born in these courts is the prestigious Western culture now. So we don't need to have any relation with the history. The thing that Europe kept this heritage as a prestigious material. as a reference of their civilization. So which means that they create conservatories, they produce musicians, they can interpret this very strictly. There's a big competition. There are thousands of young people coming out from the conservatories, etc., who can interpret all this music very well. Not only in Europe, but also in Japan, in China, in India. There are some very beautiful classical musicians, like in Turkey also, we have pianists and violinists, etc.
Yes.
Because they are from in this system of teaching. Now, coming back to our bird, to the makam bird.
Yes.
When a young musician learns the music, who plays oud, who says something, he learned very superficially. Technically, he studied a bit guitar to be more virtuoso on the oud.
Yeah.
And he plays some improvisations with his oud, etc. But there is no any repertoire studied on it. Like in Iran also. What we call today Iranian music is just improvisations on what we call the redif, just some examples of these different makams, but just few bars of a phrase which is written in 18th century. They call it redif, and they improvise on this. But they don't have any, for example, the composition done in 14th, 15th century or 16th century with the poetry of Hafiz or Saadi, etc. No, they don't have it. But they call the avaz, they just sing improvised poem. There is no any repertoire on this.
Yeah.
So in Turkey we have the chance to have all this material. But we don't want to explore it because just forget about this for us. So since we don't have artists learning the music with the correct repertoire, not for only technically on his instrument or his vocal singing or with the beauty of his voice, but with the knowledge, then we cannot progress. So since the artists, they are not capable to appreciate first themselves what they are doing and to share what they are doing with the others, we cannot touch a real public of the music. Our intelligentsia, he will be never interested with this, since you artistically you are forcing your presence in front of them. So, to keep alive a music is also related to keep alive the listeners. You see, when there are not listeners of this music, I'm talking about the real listeners of the music, not because they belong to X political party and which is nationalist and we have to listen only Turkish music. I'm not talking about this. Or X party which they are belonging to a religious feeling party politically, so they will only listen the religious songs. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about purely passionate people about the music. So we have to create this. A musician has also the duty not to well interpret his music, but to create also the listeners of his music, of this music. And let me to give you now just in that moment I have because we have been talking about Kani Karaca also a few minutes before. This ensemble is very tragic. Our government built a mosque in Tokyo in the style of Ottoman, imitation of the Ottoman style. So there is the opening of the mosque. And they send a group of musicians and Kani Karaca as a singer in this ensemble.
Mm.
Okay? So, what do you think that they sang in this mosque? With a singer like Kani Karaca, who knows all the repertoire. He can recite the Quran, he can sing the Naat, he can sing some Mevlevi music or Dervish music, he has all this repertoire.
Anything, yes.
They sang a composition of Selim III,
Oh.
which is Gönül verdim bir nevcivane, which means that I fell in love with a young boy. You see, which
Yeah.
means, why I give which means that for this generation of the musician, anything which is old is Islamic.
Mm.
Even if it's composed by Selim III, is also Sultan, Sultan, Khalifa.
Mm.
You understand?
Yeah, yeah.
So now, to give you this view that some people, they are interested with Ottoman music because they think it is all not because it's old, but not is because nationalistic, but everything which is an Ottoman heritage is religious.
Mm. Yeah. That's the way it evolved in the mind.
Yeah.
Yes. Interesting. So, Master, I would like to also touch into what happened in the early 20th century when people started to put a theory, modern theory of music, and then the concept of interval, the education, and everything.
Well, that's the not a theoric problem, but it's also a practical problem.
Mm.
You see, the beauty of the Makam music is not the Western harmony, but the subtlety of his entire work, which is not absolutely a question of agni, which is not Turkish entavas are like this, or Arabic entavas like this, or Iranian like this. It's the natural harmony, which has been calculated 500 years before Jesus by Pythagoras. The theory is simple. Let me explain you. If we have a string of 1 meter,
Yes.
you tied it enough to have each time that you
Pluck it.
pluck it to have 440 vibration,
Yes.
which is the law today. Okay.
Yes.
Anyway. If you press just in the middle,
Yes.
you have the octave.
Yes.
So which means that in the other half, when you plucked it, it becomes 880.
Yes.
Okay? So the mathematical relation of the string is 1 divided to 2. But the frequency relation of the octave, 2 divided 1, because you double it.
Yes.
Is it clear?
Yes. Very clear.
So on, Pythagoras went on to calculate the third and the fifth. So we know in this way of calculation, third is 3 divided 2, a fourth is 4 divided 3. Okay? And Pythagoras said, what should be 1 tone? The difference from Sol, G and A, or Do, A, Re, C, A, D, etc. So I said, since I know what the mathematical reference of a fifth and the fourth, if I deduce from the fifth the fourth, I will have 1 tone. So when he has done this calculation, he obtained 9 divided 8. Till there, we are agree in everything. And the problem was the problem of the third. How to calculate the third? Pythagoras, he made a shortcut. He said, if I put two tones up to each other, I will have the third. So 9 divided 8 plus 9 divided 8, which makes 81/64. And it is not consonant. It's not a harmonically correct interval.
Yes.
So he missed this calculation of the third. He couldn't find it.
Yes.
But later on, mathematically, it's been calculated by I forgot his name now in Venice, by a priest.
Yes.
So we have this harmonic series:
Yes.
10 divided 9, 5 divided 4, 6 divided 5, etc., which give different thirds. Now, to come back to the makam, we have all these intervals that we use today. They are not a cultural thing or ethnic problem. It's musicologic, a mathematic of the frequency of the sounds. Now, as third, we have 8 thirds.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And each one of them has a name. So, for example, we go up from A to B. Okay? After A, the first bemol that we have is nihavend, used in the makam nihavend.
Yes.
Okay? Today is written with the western bemol,
Yes.
which is not correct. It is lower than the western bemol. How much is you have to educate your ears. And there is another bemol, what we call kurdi. Today we play the makam nihavend with the bemol of the kurdi, which is higher than. And then there is another third, because I am not talking about it third, but just to give a distance from one tone, okay?
Yeah.
And then after there is the dik kurdi, high kurdi that we use in the Hejaz.
Yes.
Okay? And then there is another one, what we call the ushak, which is used in makam ushak. And then we have the sega. And then we have sega, which is used in Raz, the makam sega, etc., ajem, etc., hayati.
Yeah.
And then we have another, what we call buselik.
Yes.
And then we have another one, what we call the nishabur.
Yes.
You see. Now it makes 8. Let me name you again, one by one. Nihave, kurdi, dik kurdi, ushak, sega. I forgot one, mahur.
Yeah.
Right. Buselik and nishabur. 8 of them.
Yes.
Now with the RL system, we have only kurdi, dik kurdi and sega.
3.
Yeah. So from 8 thirds, 8 different thirds, the 8 different intervals of third, we have only 3.
So he cut one hand. We just got 3.
But
the other
what-
5 is cut.
Yeah. But what is extraordinary, because when we were playing with the old generation, they
Yes.
knew these intervals. Even it is written on the score 4 comma by 5 comma, etc., they were still playing correctly what it is, it should be.
Yeah.
Because it was in their ear.
Yes.
They learned the music with this way. But the generation is coming, the young generation, they just do what they hear. And of course, it makes us lose all this subtlety of the makams. Of course, there is another material for the maqam, which is not only the intervals, etc., also the itinerary. Because what was the interesting thing that Arel made also another shortcut to explain the maqams. He explained them like a scale, as we do in Western music, and saying that they were all a combination of tetrachord and pentachord. This is not correct either, because the maqam is a melodic voyage, is a melodic itinerary, what we call Seyir, voyage,
Yes.
your way,
Yes.
the way that you do. So each maqam, even has the same scale, has a different itinerary.
Yes.
For example, Ras de Saskar has the same scale, but they have a different itinerary.
Yes.
Because of this itinerary, you evoke another atmosphere. Which means that in this voyage, in this itinerary, there are some intervals, they are more important in the hierarchy than the other one.
Yeah.
You see? Sometimes I say to my students, it makes them laugh. Because the maqams are resemble to the political organization of the society. You have maqams which the tonic is an absolutist, like a king,
Yes.
like a dictator. You see. For example, in maqam rast, your work is to create all the time a relation of the other intervals with the rast,
Yes.
with the tonic.
Yes.
And you remain more before in the surrounding of the nearest chord of the tonic, which means that if you play on sol, so la si do, this is fourth, each one of these sounds you have to bring to the rast.
Gravity. Yeah.
And then and after you go to the fifth, etc. But everything is around rast. The king wants to be absolutely there.
Yes.
The other one that I call maqams constitutional. Mashrutiyat, we call it Mashrutiyat. So the king is there, but he doesn't have to do anything. He has a vizier,
Yes.
he has a minister somewhere, he's doing all the work, and just at the end he says to the sultan, yes, I have done, you are there.
Yes.
For example, Hüzzam.
Yes.
Everything is turning around the Neva, and just at the end you fall down on Seyir.
Yes. Interesting.
And the other one, which is the Republican, like Muhayyer Kurdi, Mahur, everybody has his importance.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just an image to give to
I like
your
that.
audience.
Really interesting. Yes. Yes. So, I mean, here, talking about this kind of modern theory, which really, as I understand, has departed or maybe taken us far, much more far from the language of music. It's like a foreign grammar applied to a language. Also, the practice of maybe memorization that you highlighted earlier versus reading from paper. Again, many things, the things that makes us with no hesitation go and compose things together and fuse things together, right?
Yeah, but see, we come back again to the same problem. There was a period in Turkey, if you spoke Turkish with an English accent, you were very, very raffinated person. The music is the same thing also. If you play the music with a Western accent, you can be more proud.
Yes.
You are considered as a progressist.
Yes.
Now, the thing, in one hand, we have musicians, they are completely lost in these theoretical arguments. Nobody understands what they say. I am doubting also that if they understand themselves.
Yes.
For example, of course, if you go to the old books, even, for example, Ragi's, Farabi's books, and Safiuddin, etc., oh, it's extraordinary. So they are talking about Safiuddin, etc., all these old manuscripts. But this doesn't bring anything to the actual music. Doesn't solve our problems. You see. And otherwise, they in this text they see the name of different maqams. I even calculate myself. You can go till 491 maqams. Extraordinary.
Yes.
But there is no repertoire on this. Most of them, there is no piece. You just have the theoretically how it works, but that's all. You know the combination. So I think this kind of work, which because in the modernity we think that the intelligence should dominate our life, not the feeling.
Yes.
So when you talk in this way about the music, you prove that you are intelligent. You have an intelligent view of the music.
Yes.
That's perfect. But the music is not in there. You see?
Yes. Yes, interesting. So, Master, one last point here, and I'll come back to Al-Maraghi after a break. Al-Maraghi and Al-Urmawi. I have one interesting question about them and their relevance to today. But one final thing. Do you believe the intervals are really different from one region to another? Like the intervals of the Arabs versus the Persians versus the Turks? Or are they originally the same interval, using the same intervals?
No, I don't think. But let me explain. For example, if you look to the instruments like saz, balama, buzuk, tampura, etc., that we have, you have the frets.
Yes.
Of course, these instruments, they have less frets than a tambur, for example, classical tambur of Istanbul. That can make things that, yes, these intervals, they are not used in the popular music. It's just a classical music is used. It's not true. Because the maqams that are used in popular music, they are more restricted. So if you play Seyir and if you have to go to Kurdi, you can have either another fret or you can just pull and move the fret and you can do it.
Yes.
It's not a proof of this. The other thing, we know that in 1932, there was this big Congress of Cairo.
Right.
Which everybody knows, and in Turkey nobody wanted to go. At the end, just 2 persons, Rafiq Tabi, went there, and the decision after this came out to divide the diatonic scale in 2 and create these quarter tones. Why we have done this? Because if we come to the diatonic and how the temperated scale came out, is the fact that the necessity of big symphonic orchestras with playing with these different octaves, and Bach, who was transposing, modulating in different octaves, etc., with the big orgs, etc., there was this necessity of compacting the intervals. in order that if you play an A here and 5 octave after, you can get the same A.
Yes.
See? But with the natural harmony, it's not possible.
Mm.
Because we know if you repeat, for example, 15 times a fifth or 7 times an octave, at the end you are not same. It moves. And
Yeah.
there's also the ears who
Yes.
appreciate things in a different way,
Mm.
not only mathematically.
Yes.
So this diatonic temporary scale, as I understand, came out from this necessity of doing some mathematical intervention to make it sound equal in everywhere.
Yes.
Okay? Which makes that one tone is more close, a fifth is more straight, a fourth is nearly same, and the third is a catastrophic.
Yes.
You see?
Yes.
And so what we can do, how we can do to come out to the Western style of the musical language, to make it polyphony. We couldn't do it with the natural intervals. It's not possible. So we need also to temperate them to create the polyphony, harmony, etc. And then it came this idea, 24 intervals, equal intervals. Just dividing the diatonic, 12 intervals of the clavier of the piano, for example, in 2 to get the 24. We know, for example, in Lebanon, I forgot his name, they even made a piano with quarter tones.
Yes. Yes.
It sounds awful. But to me, it sounds awful.
Yeah.
And by this fact, I think this choice has also something to do with the situation of the Arabic intervals of today. You see? And in Iran, the situation is different. They have, for example, they use only what we call the ushak, the third which is straight, very small major third, which exists in our music also. But we don't use it in the makam that they use.
Yes.
And yeah, but for me, to my understanding, all this is not a question of cultural reality, but is sort of some political and political-cultural decisions that we came out to this.
Yeah, so we need to go back to the very old recordings of Rust to see how Rust was in the Arab world.
Yeah.
How Rust was in Turkey or Ottoman Empire, how Rust was, or whatever we call it, in Dastgah system.
You
Yes.
see, we have an expression. We say that if you repeat the same lie 1,000 times, it becomes the truth.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, interesting. So this maybe brings a doubt about what we hear, and we are very confident about. Like, no single doubt comes about melodies and intervals in our music. Maybe we need to think about it again. Maybe it's a call to go back to the old pieces, the old repertoire, and maybe understand and maybe carry over something to our today's practice.
Yeah, but I have this discussion with my Syrian students, for example.
Yeah.
They say, this is Ottoman. They do again the same mistake. The things are not correct because it's Ottoman or false because it's Syrian, etc. They are talking about the mathematical exactitude,
Yes.
about the musicological reference, not a cultural reference.
Yes.
So, I don't know, and to my ears, when, of course, when I play a third, I'm not saying what is the mathematical reference of this, that is not possible. But there is an idea of a consonance in my ears as I heard the music.
Yes.
So I searched to produce this. So it's normal also a Syrian boy who plays the oud. he will create the same intervals that which is in his memory.
So the
It's
reference,
not a-
whatever
but-
reference he had or exposure.
Yeah, the problem now is how to correct the references,
Yes,
not the musician.
exactly. Master, let's have another break with our audience and viewers. What would you like to share with us? Another thing from your work.
But I don't know. I don't remember what I sent you as a recording.
Shall we have a video recording, for example, this time? You mentioned
Video
tambour.
record? Yeah, with the tambour and ney, this old tambour.
Maybe give us an intro about this piece so we enjoy it.
Well, this is also a project that the Emir of Qatar, who bought a collection of old music instruments from Istanbul, mostly from Istanbul,
Yeah.
and mostly from 17th and 18th centuries.
Mm.
Beautiful instruments. So the antiquary who sold to Emir of Qatar, he's an old friend of mine. Somebody that I knew very well.
Yeah.
In knowing the existence of this collection, I told him that we should restore by one these instruments, make them playable,
Yes.
and make a recording with the compositions of the musicians who played this instrument in the same epoch, in the same period.
Mm.
So the first thing that we have done, it was the tambour restored.
Yeah.
And we made this album, which is maybe in the placard of Emir of Qatar today, but it's not public.
Yes.
And with all pieces composed from 17th and 18th century, the period which this tambour was composed, made, and musicians like Ampar Suleiman, Tamburi Mustafa Çavuş, and all these tambour players, composition. But by recording this, we had this idea also, because in the garden where we recorded it was the studio of the Peter Gabriel, Real World Studios, where we record this album. And there were so beautiful birds singing.
Wow.
The idea came to play with the birds. They just like this, and then the sound engineers, they put their microphones, and they bring the camera, and we just played some improvisation, completely improvisations, and not the pieces that I mentioned, with tambour and ney.
Interesting. So we'll enjoy it together then.
Yeah, thank you. Tambour is played with Murat Aydemir, a young musician.
Greetings to Murat. Yeah, we'll listen to it then.
Thank you.
So, Master, let me go back to the old books that were describing music or maybe putting some sort of theory. We have Safiuddin al-Armawi, we have Miravi, we have people who came after like Qutbuddin Shirazi, Ladiqi, Sayyadi, Shajara Dat al-Akmam, whoever came later. Are these relevant to today? Can we use them to maybe revive or maybe correct our way of dealing with this music? Or we don't need this effort?
Well, first thing that all these books, they are also translated into French. I don't know if it exists in English, but I have the French version, which Baron d'Erlanger,
Yeah.
when he was in Tunisia, I think he's been helped by a committee of Arabic-speaking people.
Yes.
They have done this translation. I was very excited to find all this. It's, I think, 6 volumes of it that I bought, and you cannot find anymore. I mean, it's just an edition of 18th and the beginning of 19th century.
Yeah.
So you cannot really find it today. But I have a copy of that, and I was so excited to have a look to this. But it ended with a deception.
Oh.
Because
Yes.
nothing is useful today to the music, to a musician. I mean, there are many interesting arguments, philosophical arguments, etc., and some information for the wood players because the reference instrument is the wood, etc.
Yeah.
And I don't think it will come out anything about this. And there is another material which is interesting, which is in French also, the Encyclopedia of Lavignac, which is very interesting because these first volumes is you have an information, very beautiful articles about all music, Greek music, Chinese music, Turkish music, Persian music, etc. They're very, very interesting articles, and there's this very beautiful article from Rafiq Tabi, which is interesting to see the mentality of that period, the beginning of the 20th century. But concerning Meraghi, personally, for me, as a musician, I am more interested about articles about the music than to have a score of a music is more interesting for me.
Yes.
You see, when I look, for example, to Lavignac and I see some score from the Chinese music, I try to play it.
Yes.
It's very interesting for me. Or some Byzantine music, some scores, I try to play it. For me, it's more interesting than the text which is around about this. Of course, it's important also, but
Yes.
From the musician side, I am more interested for the musical material
Okay.
than the
Gotcha.
talking about this. And for example, to give you an example about, for example, Farabi's Kitab Kebir al-Muski. What I remember a passage about this, which is very, very important. about what we are talking,
Mm.
he gives the example of a woman
Mm.
who lost her husband.
Mm.
And she sings a lamentation in the funeral
Mm.
because she has a pain in her heart.
Yeah.
But she's not a musician
Mm.
because the moment is so strong.
Yes.
So if you ask her 1 month later or 2 months later, can you sing what you sang in the funeral? She cannot.
Mm.
So you have to create all the atmosphere of this funeral, talk about her husband, about the day of the funeral, so she gets into that moment
Mm.
and she can sing.
Mm.
She is not still an artist, a musician,
Mm.
because she needs a certain condition to be able to do it.
Mm.
The real musician, when you say, can you sing me a lamentation?
Mm.
He sings or she sings exactly like at the moment of the funeral.
Mm.
That's the artist.
Okay. Interesting.
These kind of arguments are very interesting in this kind of books. Because this helpful for the mentality,
Mm.
but not the music itself.
Mm.
I mean, not for the practice of the music itself.
Mm.
And for example, for me, what is very interesting is I can tell you two material that I worked on this. One, the book of Kantemir, Dimitri Kantemir.
Yes.
It's been published in Turkey also. And I show you the book. Yes, yes. It's a Risale, fantastic.
Wow.
In Turkey. This is a very beautiful work. Kitabu ilm al-musiki ala vech al-hurufat.
Yes.
You understand what they mean?
Arabic title, yes.
Yeah.
كتاب علم الموسيقى على وجه الحروفات.
Ala vech al-hurufat. And
Yes.
he created a musical notation.
Mm.
Of course, this musical notation exists before
Yes.
by Nai Osman Dede. And he
Yes.
developed. But
Yes.
we don't have much material transcribed by Osman Dede.
Mm.
But he has done more than 300 pieces
Mm.
transcribed.
Yes.
So to work on this is interesting for me.
Mm. Very practical side, yeah.
Yeah. And now in 10 days we do in Venice a concert with the scores that I took out from this
Interesting.
with my students.
Mm.
And also, for example, there is the Hamparsal transcription is very interesting, some material transcribed, which they have been transcribed. There is also the contemporary work of Sufi Ezgi.
Mm.
Türk Muskisi Ansiklopedisi. He made a sort of big encyclopedia with many, many transcriptions. It's very, very well done.
So collected from many sources.
Yes, and it's
Kantemir
really a fantastic work.
Mm.
It's very good. And so you see, there are some work also in the early 20th century, which has been done as transcriptions from Rafik Tabey, from the city of Istanbul, when the Rafik Tabey and they what they call repertoire kurulu, commission of the repertoire,
Mm.
because they were not able anymore to play the music.
Mm.
As they were salary people, they gave them a room and said, sit there and transcribe your music. And it's all. And this is also very interesting because specifically for the music of the Mevlevi ceremonial musics and Bektashi musics, etc. So there are some transcriptions which are for me are more useful than these old theory books, which doesn't really bring much to the practice of the music.
Yeah, but sometimes there is a light in there that
Yeah,
is
of course.
better than the way we approach it today with the new tool set.
Of
isn't
course,
it?
of course. But I am talking about the practical side of it.
Yes.
Not the reflection about the music. I mean, this is very important to have all these manuscripts and to make it them accessible.
Yes.
But of course, for example, we were talking about Meraghi. For me, it's more interesting to discover a score of Meraghi, but I don't have to discover because my father has done the first transcriptions and I have all the collection of it.
Yeah.
And
What
to
is
play them,
what is the source of Al-Maraghi's notation or transcription, and how authentic they are?
yeah, of course, it's a big question.
Yeah. Just touching on it a bit, because otherwise the viewers will kill me if I don't ask this question.
But you see, we can always make a doubt, interrogation point of it.
Authenticity.
There is
Yeah.
two I think that makes them that they are authentic. First, there are some transcriptions in Habarsum transcriptions, not transcribed by Habarsum himself, but by people using Habarsum notation,
Yeah.
which is Armenian notation,
Yeah.
and also there is the oral tradition.
Mm.
So the work of my father, it consists to work, for example, the people like Jahid Gözkan, who was a note master, or Saadettin Heper, or Halil Can. These people, they were also collectors.
Ah. Okay.
And and also my grandfather also, of course, so he inherited something from his father. So he bring all this, and he was the first person in 1960s to introduce Meraghi's pieces in the radio.
Wow.
But since then, the music started after Selim III. See?
Yeah.
Which means after French Revolution. Because Selim III was on the throne in 1789. You see? And as he was a composer, a passionate musician, etc., he provoked a new era of the music. But what is before, it was completely forgotten, especially Meraghi. And Meraghi is very important to me to play Meraghi's pieces because he's the origin of the Ottoman music. Not only Ottoman music, but the classical music of all that area.
Interesting.
It's not concerned only Turkish people, Iranian people, Afghan people, Arab world also.
Yeah.
See?
No, we need to talk about this personality in detail later.
Yeah, and he's the, for me, he's the father of the Makam music in the classical sense of it.
Yes.
See? And so I was so happy to go into the music directly than to the manuscripts.
Yes. I want to conclude on this point with one question, Master. Now, talking about the father of all this Makam music, Meraghi, can we bring back and connect all these musics today that are becoming different, becoming nationalistic, to the same unity? Like people from Persia understand Arabic music, understand the Turkish or Ottoman music, Armenian, Greek, and so on. All this region here. Can we bring them back with the concept of fatherhood today, in one way or another?
Of course. This is a question of the promotion. This is but what we do today, for example, if a festival in Cairo wants to invite a Turkish musician, Turkish music, he will invite some people who plays marriage music.
Yes.
Because the director of a festival doesn't have any idea about what he can invite. You see, instead of saying to a musician, I want to have the repertoire of Meraghi, prepare it and come and play in my festival Meragi's pieces, then it will be work. But
Yeah.
nobody dare to this because intellectually nobody knows even Abdul Qadir Meragi.
And how do we avoid the cheap fusion? I have seen. I'm asking because from a practical perspective, you have how many albums now?
And I count last time is 130, with also including some albums that it's been done in 33 tours,
Yes.
and some others that I played in it, and I'm one of the solists.
Yes. So 150 we say, or
130.
okay, all right. So Master, now connecting to this last point on Al Maraghi and seeing your albums in Singapore, the one that has many flavors, plus going back to the older music, composing new music, making maybe a samai in like a Japanese flavor as you have done, right? Or whatever. How can we avoid the cheap fusion that many people just make it quickly? And I mean, when you do this, is that a kind of a fusion, or what kind of work is this?
Well, let me answer you with some words of Rumi,
Okay.
which is my treasure.
Okay.
He says there are two kinds of music,
Yes.
which moves the nafs.
Yes. The soul. Yes.
No, nafs, not the soul.
Ah, nafs.
Body.
Yeah.
Body.
Yes.
Huh?
Yeah.
And also there is another music which moves the roh.
Okay. Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
And he says one is haram, the other one is obliged, is really wajib.
Wajib. Okay.
Okay?
So we translate this part.
Yeah. And
Yes.
this
So
is-
one for the body, one for the soul. If
Yeah.
we can maybe tolerantly.
But if you
translate.
have sensibility, even the one of the body, you listen it with your spirit.
Yes.
You understand?
Yeah.
No, what I want to say today, when we look for a music, we want to enjoy physically about this. It doesn't bring any reflection, any deep feeling about this. You see? Of course, for example, but in the contrary, if you go to a concert hall, if you have to listen a requiem, it's also very, very heavy music. But as it is a classical music, you listen it religiously. Let me give you another example. The end of the Ottoman area, the end of the Ottoman time, the state didn't have enough money. When the soldiers, they were going to expedition, they had a bowl of boiled rice. Okay?
Yeah.
So, if you want to eat it as a main dish, you put salt on it.
Yes.
If you want to eat it as a salad, you put some vinegar on it. If you want to eat it as a dessert, you put some sugar on it. See?
Yes.
The melodies are like this. It depends in which context, how you present it. You see? So, today, for example, what they call the Sufi music, etc., is presented like a marriage music. But the same melodies you can hear in a ceremony in a totally different taste. So, the music is transformed by the listeners, by the interpret, and by the context of it. If you listen, for example, we know that this very famous violinist, I forgot his name, that he was having a concert in the biggest concert hall of New York.
Yeah.
They invite him to play in the street. The tickets of his concert, they were maybe $200 to go in.
Yeah. Yes.
But when he played in the street, nobody gave him a penny.
Mhm. Yes.
Because the context is not there.
Yes.
See?
Mm.
So it's exactly like this. If the context is there, the music brand takes another situation. For example, I was in Pakistan with Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. I recorded many times. So we were in different places. Sometimes he was invited in the house of rich people.
Mm.
They were going party.
Yes.
So everybody was drunk and he was singing. Nobody was listening. He was like an atmosphere music.
Mm.
Because the context was not there.
Mm.
But we went also to a concert hall in Al Habra in Lahore.
Mm.
It was the Western concert hall.
Mm.
It was different atmosphere. We also went with him, for example, in a village. There was a religious celebration. And you could see the difference.
Yes.
The music is same. The musician is same.
Mm.
But listeners are different and the contexts are different. So today, I repeat, we have the problem with the listeners, with the context of it, the context of the civilization to present this music.
Yes.
And also the mentality of the musicians.
Mm.
Because all the musicians, they don't dare to play this heavy stuff because they think the public will get bored.
Mm. Mm.
You understand?
Yeah.
So that makes that there are three reasons for this situation: context, the mentality of the musicians, and the listeners.
Interesting. Yes, Master, I don't want to bother you with the long time. I'm really enjoying. I'm sure the viewers are enjoying. But let me conclude with very quick questions, if you allow me. Let's talk about your academic activities. You teach in academia, and I'm sure you teach maybe behind or beyond academia. Let's maybe highlight a bit about this. And yeah.
Well, it's been a time in 1980s I wanted to create my own public. So I created an association here in Paris. So there were many people, but they were more interested with the mystical side of the music than the music itself.
Okay.
You see, this kind of Western people, if they blow in the ney, it's like a treatment, psychological treatment, you see.
Yes.
So it was a bit heavy for me, but then around 15, 16 years ago, I started to a program in Venice with this foundation called Fondazione Cini. And also an academia called La Musica Comparata, Istituto della Musica Comparata. It's an institute of comparative music. And the University of Venice. And this project I called Birun, because inside of the palace we call it Enderun, which was a great school of the music, and I called this Birun, outside of the palace.
Yes.
And the program was consisting each year to have a subject. For example, 1 year we have done the compositions from the manuscript of Petraki Lampadarios, who was a ney player of Istanbul from the Patriarcha, Orthodox Patriarcha, and he was a ney player in the Mevlevihane. So we found some manuscript of this in Byzantine notation, and we have done a concert dedicated to this. 1 year I have done a project about this Herat, from Herat to Istanbul, compositions of Meragi. 1 year we have done, for example, Maftirim, the Jewish music, Hebrew language from Istanbul.
Yeah.
And we have done the sacred songs of Istanbul, as a concert. And so what consists this project, like we do this in 10 days in Venice again. So these candidates that they send their CV and their recordings, I select them because the foundation gives a scholarship, of course limited to 6 or 7 persons, not more.
Yeah.
So I create a small ensemble with this, and with the selection of the people. Sometimes it's 10 persons, sometimes 11, sometimes it's limited to 6. Depends on the economic situation. But it's really great for this foundation. I'm so thankful to them because they are promoting this.
Yes.
Not Turkish people, not Arabic people, not Arab people, not Farsi people, but any Italian institute is promoting. So fantastic.
Yes.
And so what we do with these candidates, we remain for 1 week a workshop. From 9 o'clock till 7, we work very hardly to learn this repertoire that I propose. And there are also some conferences around this project in the university. And then we do a recording of it. It comes out a CD promoted by the institute. And we have a concert in this beautiful monastery, which is in which the foundation has.
Yes.
On the Isola San Giorgio. And it ends with a concert with a free entrance, because the foundation doesn't have any material interest in this.
Yeah.
So this goes on since 16 years now. Every year we do another project. And then, more than 10 years now, I'm teaching in the Conservatory of Kodaks, which is a performing art university. It's a very, very big school with more than 5,000 or 6,000 students. We have this department called VMDC, World Music Department, in which there are different parts. I mean, there is the tango department, there is flamenco department, there is jazz, pop, etc. And there is this Ottoman or Turkish music, makam music department.
Yes.
So I am the artistic director of this makam department. So I had the honor of having very talented students. They, from now today, most of them are professional artists playing in Greece, in Cyprus, and all over the world. I mean, they are really great musicians. I am very proud of forming them. And some of them, they became even teacher side to me in the conservatory.
Interesting. So
I have a team of teachers which formed by my students. In our department, really growing up enormously, and specifically with the immigration of Syrians, because there are many Syrians, there are many Greek people, very rare Turkish people, and we have some French, English. I had even a Chinese student from all over the world. And we worked really makam music with the tile and pieces and tawa.
interesting. So did you count the number of students?
No, I mean, it is
There
not.
are many.
No.
Did you quantify the impact? Your impact is everywhere, Master.
No, I think it's no. I'm sure that other musicians also they do many things. I mean, I gave the example
for sure.
of Seyir. He has done a great work. The thing is, there are some other groups of people, for example, in Berlin, etc. But they do this Schalke repertoire all the time with the immigration. It's towards the immigration. It doesn't have any serious institutional teaching. I mean, the Kodats, the work that we do in Kodats is really very serious and very, I should say, we form really musicians. With a thesis at the end, there is a master to do afterward, etc.
Yeah, interesting. Master, there are many things to discuss with you. But maybe let's touch on one last thing, the books that you have done and the kind of research you believe away from the academic diseases.
Well, you speak about the academic diseases. Yes, of course. It's necessary. It's very important. I mean, not to deny the importance of the academic work,
Yeah.
which is a big source for us.
Yes.
But it doesn't have a big compact on the musical term for the public.
Yes.
It can be an aspiration, but it doesn't have a concrete compact, the academic work. Yes, the thing, the books that I have done is, I don't pretend to be a writer, so because my English, my French, except my Italian that I studied, is just by ear. I am not, even though I live since many years in France, I didn't study French. I didn't have time to study it.
Yes.
So I have diplomas of architecture, musicology, etc. But I cannot pretend to be a French writer or an English writer. But I've been happy to write books. The first thing that I have done with collaboration with a French friend of mine, we did translate Rumi's Mesnevi. But some part of it, I mean, not the whole thing, because it's huge big. Because the Mesnevi is 25,625 districts. It's huge big work to do, but some selections of it. And this book exists till 1980s, and it's been translated into English, Spanish, Portugal, Turkish, etc., in many languages. And then I had one student in my school. He was studying here French literature. He's a French guy. And then he became editor. First thing that he became editor, he came to me. He said, the first book that I want to edit should be yours. So what do you want me to write? He said, when you were teaching, you were telling us so many interesting things. I want you to write them. And then, so we developed this idea, the book called La Fontaine de la Séparation, the book of separation, fountain of separation.
Okay.
This image of La Fontaine, this fountain, it was a real fountain in Istanbul, because when the sultans, they were going to expedition in the east, the officials who remained in Istanbul, they were accompanying them till this fountain. When the expedition was coming back, they had to be present in this fountain to receive the sultan coming back. It was a sort of meeting point between East and West. That's why I took this name.
Interesting.
And it's very interesting. Today, after this book, it became a station where there was this fountain. The fountain doesn't exist anymore, but they made a bus station called Fountain of Separation. Yes. And so this book also had very much interest. It's been translated into Turkish from my wife. She translated into Turkish. There's a translation into English and Greek, some Spanish also. And then I have also another book in Turkish about the meeting and the relation between Rumi, Jalaluddin Rumi, and Shams de Tabriz. And also another book that I wrote recently with my wife, Details of the Mesnevi. And now I'm preparing another book. Inshallah, I will finish this month. About the misunderstandings about Rumi.
Okay.
And 50 misunderstanding. And then, inshallah, I will start to write a book of music.
Okay. All right.
I feel the necessity.
Yes, interesting. And what about the journeys of a Sufi?
That's the translation of the Fountain of Separation.
Okay. That's the title.
English version of it.
Okay, interesting.
There's another one I forgot. Which is a collection. Let me show you the book.
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot even two.
Maybe more.
This is the book,
Yes.
which is this collection, Terre Humaine,
Mm.
is existing still 1950.
Mhm.
So every year, this edition, Plon, which is a very, very important edition,
Yeah.
he takes one personality and makes a book about his life.
Mm.
So 110th personality, 1950, it's me.
Yes.
It was an honor to be published in this collection.
Yes.
And this is also one book that I wrote about the life of the Bektash, Hacı Bektash. It's a contemporary of Rumi.
Yes. Mm.
It's in French also, but it's not being translated in English.
Interesting.
But I'm really thinking, I already prepared some material for my book about the music.
Mm.
Inshallah, I will be able to do it.
Yes.
life
Shall we
comes.
wait for some time to tell us about the idea of it, or can you give some?
The idea is first of all the different titles to work
Mm.
with. Is the history of the music,
Mm.
the problem of the intervals in the
Mm.
time, the problem of the style,
Mm.
the stylistic problem,
Yes.
and also to come to a practical side afterward
Mm.
to describe the makams with some examples, short examples.
Okay.
Each makam, not in the sense of the pentachord, tetrachord, that as we
Yeah.
do, but with the itinerary of it,
Okay. Interesting.
and some compositions, and some specificity of the makams.
Interesting. And for sure it will hit into all what you said, style, rhythm, usul, forms.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the usul, yes. I did the usul part I already prepared.
Yeah.
I mean, some part of some chapters of this project is already there, but I have to
Mhm.
work
Yes.
on it.
Yeah. Master, what is the objective of, what should be the objective of artists today or musicians?
Let me give you this example that I give with the bees.
Yeah. Okay.
You see, as I told you, the bee, if it's in the garden of the rose, makes a rose honey.
Yes.
With an acacia, it makes acacia honey. If it's on the rubbish, it's glucose.
Yeah.
No, I think the musicians, they have to feed themselves
Mm.
with history,
Mm.
with the literature. History, literature.
Yes.
It is very important
Mm.
because the music on itself is not enough.
Mm.
You make the sounds, you learn the language, but you don't know what to say with it. You see?
Yeah.
So when you have nothing to say, you can be a virtuoso of the language.
Mm.
But you always say the lies because you don't have anything to say with it.
Yes.
And that's the today for many musicians is a big problem.
Mm.
I mean, they think that if they are technically a good musician, that's enough.
Yes.
You see,
What an advice.
either you have people like academicians, they take a paper and they read it very badly, doesn't communicate anything.
Mm.
You look to the scores and you play something and you are interpret.
Mm.
Either you are an artist.
Yes.
If you are an artist, you have to feed yourself.
Mm.
Your spirit, your understanding, your view, your imagination.
Mm. And we recall Al-Farabi story.
Yeah.
Master, I really enjoyed this interview. And
It's pleasure also to
Yeah.
talk somebody which is really passionate with the music. I always say that because one of the problem of us, people I can give from my example, with whom to discuss all this problem, to speak about the music.
Yes.
It's very rare because people think, okay. But even the musicologists,
Yes.
they do it because it's their profession, but they don't have the passion
Yes.
most of
Yes.
the time. And so it was a pleasure to speak to you because I feel in you somebody who is deeply interested in the music.
Thank you very much. I'm really grateful. And let's maybe pick something from your works that we need to conclude with. We say ختامها مسك, so the end is we put
Why you don't use the DVD that I sent you from the concert in Japan,
Okay.
which is done in a very, very beautiful museum near to Kyoto. I mean, far away from the Kyoto, in the forest, called Miho Museum. And the building, I mean, the architecture is really very interesting. It was done with Pia, the Chinese architect, who has done the pyramid of Louvre in Paris. He's a genius architect. And he has done something very beautiful. You will see behind us, you will see the forest. And the Japanese public is very, very interesting. Very interesting because they have a way of listening. They are very emoted, very emotional, but they are educated to don't express their emotion.
Yes. And what are you giving them? What is the music being shown?
Well, I don't remember exactly what we played. We played some repertoire, old repertoire from 17th, 18th century, and there was also some poetry sang by our singer who is in Hafiz. He was one of the Neyzen of the Mosque of Fatih Mehmet in Istanbul. And I invite him especially for this free singing because we didn't sing sharkers in repertoires. The repertoires are instrumental, but at some moment we ask him to sing this gazelle or kasida. What we call gazelle is some poetry.
Yeah, we'll enjoy it. And before that, thanks again, Master. Really.
Thanks and greetings to all your listeners.
Sure. Thank you, and we'll meet again.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
السلام